And we're live. What's up?
Jeremy, what's happening?
Hey, we're on YouTube and Facebook, I believe, now.
Look at us. Look
So,
at us.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's
Okay,
do it.
yeah. So we're live, so there's no editing, so things like that happen. But basically, Jeremy, we're going to be talking about when you should and actually when you shouldn't
You shouldn't.
do outbound. When it
Yeah.
really doesn't make sense to do cold emailing or other
Oh,
kinds of B2B outbound.
hold on a second, Jack. I mean, cold email is fine for every business, so we're good to go, right? Let's take your list, blast it.
I don't
We're
think
good.
so. I don't think so. So, by the way, that's a good place to start. Is we're not going to be covering the obvious ones. Where if you're selling nutritional supplements, don't buy a list of B2B emails and just blast them.
Why not? I think that could work.
Why not?
You don't know
Well,
until you try, Jack.
I have tried. I have tried, and that
Oh.
that only works if you partner with a list.
Hmm.
If you basically buy your way onto somebody's list that they have built for you, particularly around the nutrition space. Um, but all things considered, these are our 5 reasons when it wouldn't make sense to do outbound. We're going to revisit this. We've had a conversation probably a couple of years ago on this topic, but I've just found a pattern of some brands having a lot more success than others, and it's worth a revisit.
Nice. So you're gonna share it with us, and I got my notes as well. I'd be happy to get your take on it.
Yeah. All right. So kick us off, Jeremy. What's first on your list?
Well, the one that you and I has been discussing and know already, and I think we kind of agree, is when the price or the price deal is too low. Like, let's say you have a product that is like $1 or $2 a month, or like a one-off $9, then you're gonna have a hard time making it work with cold email just because of the economic. Especially, you're gonna have to go for volume, and the chances, even like getting the list, like if you want to personalize and stuff like that, I think your time will be better off just doing something else.
So I was approached last week. Somebody was selling to physicians. They had a $97 product that was a one-time uh, payment, and they asked me, "Hey, I have a bunch of email addresses that I know are with the right physicians here. Help me send this message and make an inbox so that we can sell these courses." But at the end of the day, it wasn't the right channel, uh, primarily because of price. Even though there was a back end business that was going on after
Yep.
people purchased, I think it really comes down to the the fact that it's very difficult to inbox if you are sending unpersonalized messages to thousands of people. If that's your play, I'm thinking a joint venture with somebody who has that audience,
Hmm.
affiliate, but cold
Influencer.
traffic. Yeah, and the thing was, I told him, I was like, "Are you going to have somebody field responses and replies as these conversations have started?" And he said, "No, no, I'm just going to have links.
Yeah,
I'll
that's all we
send a
need.
link.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll click, they'll watch a video, they'll pay,
Yeah.
they'll pay." So the reason I told him that wasn't going to work, and hopefully somebody listening will maybe save themselves the hassle, is cold email is a tool to start conversations, not a traffic source. Plain
Yeah,
and
I think
simple.
it's really worth, repeating over and over again. This is to open a conversation, whether it's a sales conversation or a network relationship conversation, but
Yeah.
it's always to open a conversation. It's the same with people who sometimes they come to QuickMail and they say, "Hey, all we want really is to send email so we can send them to a webinar." And I was like, seriously? I mean, that that's not the best usage, for cold email software. If you want to go, like webinar and stuff like that, just do retargeting or just targeting, having like your list and go with ads. I think that's probably the best
Right.
way. If people are interested in the topic, they will come and check it out rather than having an email or go and connect with people in the same group as you on LinkedIn or some other stuff. But cold email probably not the right thing if
Right.
you're not intending to get replies and then engage. No, you're thinking.
Yeah. Um,
Oh, it's
okay,
just online.
so yeah, that's fine. Um, I have a list here. I'll kick it off here, and whatever I say in the next, half an hour is not necessarily a hard rule. If this applies to you, you'll never have success, because even the pricing thing we just talked about, you could have success by cold emailing people that have influence with your right list and then making sales that way. So it's not that cold email or outbound is dead for you. It's just going to make it a little bit tougher, and you're going to have to think more creatively. So first on my list, if you are selling something that has a very long buying cycle, meaning if a company is only
That's
going to make
interesting.
this decision twice in its lifetime, you may have a tough time with outbound. Specifically, um, imagine you're selling life insurance to doctors, and I'll bring this case up because I had a conversation with somebody who was looking to do this with cold email, and he told me this decision is made as soon as you have a kid, and it's basically done within 12 months of that event. So that's a very hard list to build. A list of doctors that just had a child. I mean, you're shooting in the dark because you don't have that information. And if you don't have that information, it's going to take you a lot of tries to get in front of that doctor who just had a kid. And in the meantime, deliverability is going to be an uphill battle for you.
But Jack, if
Yeah.
you have, for example, if you manage to find the trigger and have like a really small list, then I think you can still make it work, but you're gonna have to have really good information. Otherwise, effectively, the volume or the economic may actually not work.
Yes, and thanks for bringing that up, Jeremy. If you know the trigger that precedes this decision, and some data providers say they have this stuff. They, for example, they know before somebody posts a job if their website crashed, or if, assuming you're selling, I don't know, support services. Um, yeah, if you know the trigger and you have data to provide you with people that have matched that trigger, then this is off the table. But if you're just shooting for the dark and you're not sure um, if your list is even going to have this on their radar because it's such an infrequent decision, um, yeah, it's going to be challenging. There's an exception here, and it's going to lead me to my second um, of 5 reasons here. Before I switch topics, you have anything else to add on this?
It's interesting because one of my reasons is the actual opposite. It's like if the sales cycle is like a 5 minutes, something that doesn't actually require any sort of engagement or conversation. It's just like you buy it, maybe it's a commodity or some stuff like that, where people don't really need to be sold on anything. So in this case, I would say that you probably don't need to go through cold email either.
Yeah, it's just added work, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's even like slowing down the sales cycle, which you don't want. It just like makes no sense.
Now, this is for cold traffic, right? So, can you
Yeah, but
think of
imagine you're selling, a commodity, right? And then people just make decision, in 2 seconds and they buy it. Then would that really make sense to go through cold email? You probably let them know in a different way because they're unlikely to engage in a conversation, get
very
to know
true.
you, build the trust, and then they can buy your salt or something
Yeah,
like that.
I imagine if you're an internet service provider and you're the only one in that area. So, if you want internet, you have to go with them. This might be an example of
That's another
commodity
one.
where,
Yeah.
yeah, just no need there. Okay, interesting. My second one that's actually going to be the caveat to this buying cycle that happens twice a lifetime, and that is if it's a bleeding neck problem, then all bets are off. Then even if you don't know the trigger, if they're struggling with this, by all means, you're going to have a lot of success. Conversely, if what you're selling has very infrequent buying cycles and it's not addressing a bleeding neck problem, to steal from Perry Marshall here, it's going to add difficulty. It's going to add a couple layers of difficulty to crack through this market, unless you know that trigger, like you mentioned, Jeremy.
Yeah, or if you have something no one actually wants.
And that's an even worse case.
You shouldn't call email or do ads or do anything else.
Yeah. While we're on this topic, my third one is you have a poor close rate. So I don't
Oh,
think
that's
you
close
should,
to that. Yeah.
yeah, don't do outbound if you have a poor close rate. I mean, there's been a
There's one
number of,
caveat. there's one caveat to this one actually. If you're still in market research, then I think this is still okay.
Okay, fair enough. But who should be doing that market research besides the founder?
Well, the founder could also be doing cold outreach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's been some early stage startups that have talked to us when they were telling us, "Hey, we're still not exactly sure who our customers are." I said, "Okay, great.
Oh,
Who's bought in the past month?" We don't have anybody who bought, but my co-founder has a friend who's close to it, or their investors like hooking us up with somebody. No, it's
so
too
you're
early.
passing up on a $5 billion market, Jack. What the fuck?
Exactly right. Yeah, I mean, look, if it's so good, you should be able to sell it to at least somebody that's already in your network, or that's someone you can get an offline introduction to. And before that happens, you're not going to have the confidence to know that you can build the right list and speak to them in the way that's going to get them excited,
Yeah, makes
right?
sense.
Okay, so that's three of mine: buying cycle, bleeding neck problem, and poor close rate. Talk to me about what's next on your list, Jeremy.
Okay, so I got a simple one, which is basically the audience is not reachable by email. Right. So if this is an audience that is, never
Mm,
spending time in front of their computer and hardly looking at their email, well, good luck trying to, reach out to them by email. And so conversely, then it's probably not going to be a good channel for you. Maybe it's radio, a good channel for you, or maybe it's a different type of, or
right.
maybe it's flyers, if it's, local community, whatever. But
Okay.
cold email probably not going to cut it.
So let me think about this. If the audience is not checking their email, and or it's nearly impossible to find their email address, is that right?
The email address, I'm not 200% concerned because you could still do the same tactic that we use for Japan, which is basically you
Mm,
go to the contact and then the contact info, and then you just go ahead and contact them. But I'm thinking like maybe your customer, don't even have a website or they don't really care about those sort of things, and so they hardly ever look
mm.
at their email stuff, but they may be listening 24/7 on their radio. Like I'm thinking the garage, people, or
Yeah, right.
the one who only like take care of local or whatever, those sort of things.
Yeah, my theory is if customers don't email you, if employees don't email you, if advisors or your uh, tax person, if they're not sending you, if you're not getting work related email on any side, whether it's customer or team facing, why would you check email, right? If
Yeah,
it's not once a week to talk to friends, in which case that's probably a terrible channel to talk work for that
that's
person.
right. Or
Now,
it could be fun. Yeah. So some people,
yeah,
some business prefer fun by a long
absolutely.
margin.
And it doesn't mean they're not reachable. It's just online outreach methods are probably not the right fit here.
Yeah.
And this
It's a
is
channel
tying
issue.
up
Mhm.
quite nicely with my next one here, Jeremy. Our heads are uh,
Yeah.
normally in the same room here. I've got offline audience written down as my number four.
That's much
But
nicer said than mine.
how did you
Usual.
label it?
Um, Audience is not reachable by email. Offline audience is much
Right.
nicer.
But I'll share a short story that will hopefully inspire somebody to think a little bit more outside the box if they happen to run into a difficult scenario here. Jeremy, how would you, let's say you were trying to pitch a product or a service to people that were putting listings up on Craigslist. You know what Craigslist is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
Okay. How would you go about contacting them and pitching something?
Oh, that's tricky.
Get
Is that a
mean
yeah.
And I'll give you some more details. You don't have their name, you don't have their email address. All you know is like some garbled up
Yeah.
username and the listing that they posted.
Well, that's tricky. You're probably going to have to write a crawler or some automation to do anything like going through their own
Eh,
platform.
Okay.
Would that work?
Yeah, so Airbnb got started
Yeah,
doing this exact
that's
thing,
right.
right? So they didn't fight it. They realized they would never find the email address for their end user. And they said, you know what, that's fine. What they did was they just used that platform to reach out and start conversations there. Um, In fact, some bells are going off on other founders who did a similar thing. Dan Martell from Clarity.fm used Skillshare or SlideShare, one of those
Slide shares.
presentation
Yeah, I
SlideShare,
remember.
and he grabbed
That
the
was
contact
pretty
info
clever.
on the last slide.
That's
Right, it
right.
was genius. So if your audience is very difficult to build an email list around, maybe don't fight and embrace the channel. Same goes if you're going after social media influencers. No need to look up somebody who's very active on Twitter or Instagram. Just contact them on that platform.
Hey,
And
I saw you were super active on Twitter, so I decided to send you an email.
yeah, I mean, it could work, but it probably doesn't make as much sense, right?
No.
Okay, so did you cover 4, Jeremy?
Let me check. I got another one when your audience is actually B2C primarily. Just because you're going to have a hard time going through people who don't expect to be sold to. Where if you go on B2B, it's like pretty much business is your email you receive on your business email address should be related to business. So it's kind of like understood. But on my personal email, I don't want any business pitching me anything. Even for maybe the right person, I'm like, dude, you're getting your targeting wrong already.
Mm,
So B2C is a very difficult one. And because again of the economic, maybe it's again with the close poor ratio, close rates, and we got what's up, Luke? So we got a poor ratio to closing, and very likely in B2C, the money is going to be very low. The deal size is going to be very low. So you're kind of like going through a sort of like uphill battle. But
right.
like we mentioned, there is way around this. So rather than actually contacting the end user, then you contact the VIP or the influencer. So influencer, if this is on Instagram and stuff like that. But it could also be like, imagine you have, a fantastic electric bike for your user. Then you actually go to the retailer and then you try to, do business deals with them. And so therefore, it's much better to try to email the 100 retailer, which potentially have an interest in putting your product in their line, versus
Yeah,
actually going for the end users in a bicycle or well, who you don't know
exactly
if they
right.
are actually like biking or stuff like that. So yeah,
Right.
B2B, B2C, yeah.
Yeah, so with that, I always think back to this VIP person that you can reach out to that can connect you to the consumer market. So I'm that's why I didn't put B2C on my list either. Just because there is a way to do outbound. You just have to think of that like VIP person that can introduce you or get your message in front of them. But yeah, in terms of classic outreach, that would make it difficult. Okay, I got my final one here, Jeremy, and that
Sure.
is weak filters. So if you come to us and say, "Hey, I've got this great thing. I've been doing inbound for a couple months, and it looks like marketers are buying it, and salespeople are buying it, and one operations person bought it, and a couple founders, and yeah, they're
Run,
from like
run.
all kind." I mean, yeah, it's too so it's too
It's
early
broad.
stage in order to think of cold email or outbound sales as a revenue generator. It's more of a learning device at that stage. Would you agree?
I love your idea. I'm actually thinking that it could potentially apply to businesses who used to grow by inbound and want to switch to outbound, but not really have the mindset, approach, resources to actually go and do outbound, or have
Yeah,
the same sort of like inbound mentality and not necessarily have nailed down what you say. The sort of people who will be receptive to that.
right. And I think the primary difference, I mean, I'm sure if we had an inbound marketer join us for the conversation, they would probably tell us that no, we're extremely laser pointed when we create our posts and our ads and this and that.
Sure.
And that may be very true, but not everybody is a laser focused inbound marketer. Like you said, if you don't have enough data that tells you with confidence, and that's the key point here, you may be spinning your wheels going after a large group of people that generally don't care as much. And in that case, there's two solutions to this. One, you have the luxury of of a long history of inbound results, and you can just take a hard look at the data and figure out where the 80-20 principle is within your paying customers, and make some educated guess on how you should build that list. Scenario 2, you don't have a lot of inbound data to help you make that decision, so you can use competitors in order to figure out how to pinpoint them. So pick your largest competitor, not necessarily a perfect match of the product, but a perfect match of the audience and the company that's doing the best job in communicating with that audience. See what logos you find in their homepage, see how they're writing their headlines and which blog posts getting a lot of engagement. That'll tell you with a certain level of confidence how you should approach outbound, but weak filters aren't going to cut it.
Agreed. And the next one I have is, I'd like to get your take on that one. This one is interesting, I think, is if you are in a part of the world where cold outreach by email is not legal, and I'm thinking of Canada, for example.
Right. Yeah. But it's still being done, right? I won't blow up our former guests here, but we recently had a Canadian come on our show and rock our world with how he was doing outbound primarily through cold email and getting a lot of results up in Toronto. And I mean, it's not just him. I know quite a few Canadians that are doing exciting things with cold email. So I think it's going to come down to how you're using it. If it's like such a clear win for the other person that they would never dream of reporting you as a spammer, or much less to the FCC or whatever that is in Canada, then I could, like, even when we were in Japan, Jeremy, do you remember we asked people, would you send cold email? And we got a mixed bag of answers. People said, absolutely not. And others were just like, yeah, I do it all the time.
That's right.
So I don't know if that's a barrier. Also, Dan Martell,
it is illegal. That's right. And they may basically get away with it, but it is illegal. And in fact, I actually know some people who got into big problem in Canada. And so they had to even close some of their own accounts because of the legal ramification.
Did they learn anything? I mean, were they like clearly spamming a lot of people? Were they personalizing?
Well, for sure, their outreach was not great, and I think that contributed to it. But the thing is still like, it's illegal. So sure, if I come and give you like a bag of drugs, then sure, you may be happy and so on. But at some point, you're going to find someone who is not happy, doesn't like it, and is going to report you. So, and Dan Martell, when he did it, it was before the CASL law in Canada. So I think he got away with that pretty easily. Nowadays, I think it may be harder to reach to do these things. But we both agree that the legislation on that one is not ideal and kind of like weird. I think it puts the Canadians at a disadvantage because other companies can do it. Other company can contact Canadian companies, but Canadian companies can't contact. It's just like weird.
Right. Yeah. And that's a separate discussion, I'm sure. But I'm not sure if that would make my list, only because I am finding enough cases of companies doing really well in many different countries, Europe included, Asia included. I think there's a clear wrong way to go about it. That's putting yourself at an unnecessary amount of risk. But I also think there's so ways around it. So what if you're reaching out to people that are already in your network and you're not necessarily bringing up the product to kick off the conversation?
I'm not a legal expert.
My point is, and I think the theme throughout this conversation, Jeremy, is,
I mean, I'm on your side. I'm sure you can actually, do a great job and so on. The only thing is, like, that's the authority you need to convince in the end if they decide to go after you, right?
Yeah. No, but I guess what I was saying was there's the theme throughout this conversation has been, these things won't work unless you do it this way.
Yeah,
B2C doesn't work unless you go
that's right.
to an influencer. If they're offline or you can't find their email, won't work unless you embrace the channel that they're already on, and so forth. So with the legal thing, I see it kind of the same here. Where it's like, okay,
Fair
you
enough.
can't approach cold people, and you can't do it in a very lazy way, but maybe this or that way could open that door for you. Um, and maybe LinkedIn is a little bit more Canada friendly.
Yeah, I
But
think you
again,
can definitely go through, emails or even cold outreach within LinkedIn because you're using a different medium, and I think that's kind of okay. So it is a
yeah,
workaround for sure. Anyway, can I say my last one?
let's hear it.
All right, the last one is like it's not a clear cut. It's basically it's way more sort of like a personal judgment in a sense. Is when you don't have the resources or you're not committed to the full cycle, which means proper research, proper prospecting, and proper copywriting and sending
Or proper follow up when somebody
and
replies
follow
with
up.
interest.
That's right too, actually. And I think when you're not,
Wow.
putting that behind, I think you're going to have a pretty hard time to succeed, and you may well just not even start, honestly.
You
What do you
struck a
think?
nerve, Jeremy. I think spot on. I mean, it still blows my mind that every now and then, fortunately now we have filters up that won't allow these kinds of clients into our agency, but every now and then we'll be generating leads and check in with the client. Hey, how are the conversations going? Oh yeah, sorry, our point person was on vacation for a while, and gosh, we've been swamped here. Not sure. We'll let you know. And it's like, you know, one of these here, palm, forehead smack, and
Well, or
yeah,
just a pure wonder, like, you guys are comfortable just throwing money out
I
of the
think it's as
window?
simple as this. It's like a coach or a mentor or an investor said you need to be doing X and Y, but the structure, it doesn't communicate all the way through, and it breaks down
Mm,
at
mm, mm,
at
mm,
some
mm.
point here. And so yeah, that happens. It should go without saying, right? But it doesn't, and I'm so happy you brought that up. Do you have any advice for somebody who's not 100% certain if they're
I do
clear on that?
actually. I
Yeah,
do actually. So I think there is multiple ways around it. The first one that I will do is, get an agency, like a proper serious one, like Jack's agency or some other agencies. But if you're serious about not having the resource for doing the cold outreach, not talking about the follow-ups yet, but if you don't have that resource,
right.
then go with an agency, right? If for the other ones, I think you just need to be serious about yourself, with yourself, and just check like what are the priorities this quarter. If the priority is effectively cold outreach, then give yourself the tools to do it. Otherwise, just don't do it. Just don't do it halfway because you cannot guarantee to fail.
Yeah. And for me, I would just tack onto that. Make sure you have, before you run any campaigns, make sure you have a team member who has the bandwidth and the ability
Yeah,
and the desire, all three of those things, to follow up with every lead appropriately. And this person needs to have a little bit of drive in them where if somebody schedules with you on Zoom and they don't show up, they need to get a follow up message. Hey, let's reschedule. It takes that kind of effort to stay on top of the leads that you're putting a lot of resources to generate. And especially going back to the start of the show here, if it's at a price point that's really exciting, thousands of dollars lifetime value, you owe it to the company to follow up properly with the leads you generate. So clear point person assigned and ready
yeah.
is going to help with that.
That reminds me, in HubSpot, they had was it HubSpot or another company anyway, and basically they had like an actual, everything in a cadence. If people don't show up on a minute, they send an email within 1 minute, right?
Nice. Yeah.
Then they send another follow up at 7, asking for a reschedule. It's like they had like the whole thing mapped out. If people don't
Wow.
show, do this. If people show, then do that. And it was pretty impressive the way they actually nailed down. I don't think you need to go to that level of sophistication, but if you do, at least you'll be able to handle them in a more consistent way and making sure people are showing to your appointments.
Right. I wonder too. I mean, that probably starts from the reminder.
Yeah, for sure. They had the reminder and
Yeah.
everything, so
So if
that's
you
pretty cool.
use Calendly, you can automatically trigger off reminders here. I've been
Yep.
encouraging people to send content the day before a call so that the person can get a little bit more excited about who they're meeting with. Send something that's an authoritative piece on your world so that when the person joins you, there's a little bit more trust baked in before you even open your mouth. So I think that game is certainly worth a deeper discussion. Maybe we can put follow-up hacks
Yeah, let's
coming
put
up in
that
the
for another
future.
cast.
All right, great. Anything else on when we should and not do outreach, Jeremy? Did we cover it?
I think we covered my side of things. Did we cover yours, Jack?
Um,
Oh, you're thinking another
yeah,
one?
I'm just thinking. I feel like the audience may think I'm like this hacker who doesn't care about laws and is just like you know send it out to the world.
I'm gonna
But
send
hope
you the FCC. No worries. I got friends
yeah.
there.
There you go. No, I think we covered it. I'll come back to if there's a will, there's a way. Really, I mean, there's people that message us, especially from the podcast and through my website that are doing outbound, and they just, I mean, I never would have thought that company would have success based on the kind of person they go after, and sure enough, that's been their best growth channel. So, if there's a will, there's a way. I'll end it with
That's
that.
right. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome, man. All right, Jack. Well, thanks for the show today.
Yeah, likewise, Jeremy. Catch you next time.
Bye, everyone.